Good morning, you eager achievers out there. This is Dr. M coming to you with a lesson on study skills and mnemonic devices for your kids that are e-learning and you're trying to figure out how they're going to memorize while they're online. Well, I've got some neat tricks for you today. If you love my videos, go ahead and subscribe. Click that button for me, and if you need my services at all, please don't hesitate to contact me at drmmansfield@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, drmelindamansfield.com. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you all can see my presentation, and then we can go from there. Don't forget, next week, I might take a break next week, but the week after I'm going to be doing a note-taking strategies lesson because some of you have been emailing me saying, oh my gosh, the teacher didn't ever teach my child about note-taking strategies. So we're totally doing that next week. But this week it seemed like more of an important thing to teach you about how your kids can use study skills and mnemonic devices. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and then we're going to get started. Here we are, study skills and mnemonic devices. Love this picture to start out with, because did you know that this is kind of a good representation of how much brain power we actually use? It's so crazy to think about it. But we only use about 10% of our brain's capacity. And we're like, okay, well, where did all this iceberg underneath the water, how can we get that, tap into that brain activity? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that today. And you teach your kids this if your teachers are not teaching them. So just to understand a little bit about what happens in the brain when memorization takes place, you've got this, the dendrites in the cell body, all of this connects to kind of fire and make these little memorization pathways, and it all happens in the axon and the dendrite. So there's kind of a little visual there of what happens when you memorize. So that's part of self-discipline and self-management to teach your kids, which is a soft skill, as to practicing that memorization skills. So if you are able to practice something over and over and over, it will create very strong memorization pathways in your brain, and it takes place there and it stays there. And so there's different parts of memorization, because memorization is only a part of it, because we have to practice, we then memorize, then we actually have to retain the information. So unless you did a little too much smoking back in the day, you should have some really good solid memorization pathways. So again, we want that retention, because have you ever taken a test after you've memorized a whole bunch of crap for the week, and then you take that test and it completely disappears? Well, that's because you didn't retain it. So what percentage of the information do you think you retain when you're just listening to an instructor or reading a chapter? This is the same as true for your kid. So if they're just listening and not taking notes, and just reading without taking notes, or you're asking questions about that chapter, like reading question and answers, then we're only getting 10% of retention. So think about that. Unless you're an auditory learner, which most of us are kinesthetic, your child isn't going to memorize that and retain it very well. So most of us who aren't audio learners will need to go a little bit further and do some more digging. So we get to that next step, taking notes over the chapter or the lecture that your child is listening to online. What percentage do you retain of memorization when you take notes over that chapter or lecture, about 15 to 25%. So again, unless you're an auditory learner, which not most of us are not, then you're only retaining 15 to 25%. Then you get to the next level, which is review and recite. Okay, that's when you're practicing over and over and over, reading through. Quizlet.com is really great for those flashcards that can be pulled up on your tablet or phone, and they can just review and recite, review and recite. Some of you, like myself, had to talk to another person and review and recite and have people ask questions so I can memorize and retain that information. So then we get to discussing it with a partner or group setting. That's when 50 to 75% happens. So when your child is in collaborative learning, love it when I see teachers doing collaborative learning practices, because that's what's happening there. 50 to 75% of retention happens when you're able to discuss it or do group activities, talk about it with another student, study with another student. That's what happens. Then you're like, well, this is crazy how much work has to be put in. Absolutely. Unless you're practicing every day with memorization techniques, you almost have to go through all of these steps. So once we get to the 80 to 100% retention, that's where it's the teaching concepts to others. So if you're able to teach it to someone else, so if your child can explain to you exactly how something works, then they've got that retention in there. So we're going to think about the way you yourself memorize, because likely your child may have strengths in those memorization skills as well. But the current memorization that you're doing, and do this activity with your kid too, because you'll want to assess where their memorization level is to begin with. So on the next slide, there's going to be a like an I Spy worksheet or page out of a book. And I want you to pause the presentation and really memorize using your own techniques that you've always used your whole life for about a minute, and then unpause and go ahead and then write down as many things as you can remember in about a minute and see how you do, okay? Go ahead and pause right now and see how many of these items can you memorize using your current memorization skills. And then when you come back, I'll be still going with my presentation. So go ahead and pause and try to do this memorization technique. Welcome back. So go ahead and write down as many as you can remember. And so pause this presentation now again so you can do that, and then assess in 1 minute how many things did you remember. And let's go back so you can see it. How many things did you remember, do you think? Well, on average, it's about 17 using old school methods of memorization, okay? So how can we do better? That's the question. How can we teach our kids to do better than that, you know, it's a simple memorization test that we just did, but how can we get kids to do better? So first we're gonna figure out what we're currently doing, because if you're continuing to do something that's not working, that's like the definition of insanity. We don't want to do that. We want to teach our kids new ways to doing things. So in order to be self-managed, that means that they have to have a place that's conducive to their study skills, okay? So when I say that, I have several students that are on IEPs that are ADHD. Their conducive study methods are with blaring rap in their ears and squishing a stress ball while they're studying. Whatever it is for your child. For me, I have to have complete silence. and I can't have distractions. So I shut my curtains, I shut my door, I put on my noise canceling headphones. I might listen to classical music, but your kid's going to be different. Every child is different. So create that environment where it's conducive for their learning. So they need to start creating lists, and to stay on that schedule. Make sure that their area is conducive to studying, like we said. They can take notes, which next time's presentation I'll be talking about the different ways of notes, outlines, and mnemonic devices, and exercising your memory. I highly recommend having your kid do like a 10-minute memorization app game or something of that nature before they get started with their online learning every single day. Like every day, because that's, your brain is a muscle like that. It needs exercise. Okay? So I would highly recommend doing that. I love TikTok. Have your kid do a TikTok before e-learning. It's a great idea. Okay, but I'm going to teach you about mnemonic devices so you can teach your kid how to do it and come up with unique ways to memorize, okay? So what is a mnemonic device? It's simply just little tricks and tools that help kids remember, okay? And not all of teachers are able to teach this. So simply put, an acronym is one mnemonic device that your child may feel comfortable with using. It's text speech. They already know how to do it. I mean, as soon as possible, LOL. Fun fact, I was watching ER the other day, like old episodes, and LOL was an acronym for them for little old lady. Isn't that hilarious? And now our kids are using it as laugh out loud, and us. WWJD, ETA, if you're not familiar with that expression, which I couldn't believe how many people weren't, that means estimated time of arrival. Then we get into science. So features of a living organism is Mrs. Gren, which stands for movement, respiration, sensation, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. So if they remember those first letters, Mrs. Gren, they could be able to memorize that pretty well for their schooling for that science class. And then math, the orders of operations stand for FOIL. So if they remember that, that could help them as well. I remember that one myself. So then for other mnemonics are acrostics. These are words that are standing in place of something else. So some students don't do well with the acronyms, but they do better with acrostics. So for example, the order of planets, or my very educated mother just served us nachos. Mercury, Venus, all that stuff, that is the order of the planets. So they put a word in for the place of. So some kids learn better this way. Directions, never eat shredded wheat. I've heard sour worms, which is gross. So I try to do more fun ones like never eat shredded wheat. Treble clef lines for music. Every good boy does fine. Stories, you can create a story about different things too. So if you wanted to remember the order of planets, if your kid is more creative, they might want to create a story. If they're more kinesthetic, stories might help with that. So if they learn the orders of planet, Mercury decided to go visit Venus, and on the way they went to blah, blah, blah. You know, like, so a story might happen in your kid's mind that will help them remember something. So then and that goes along with poems and jingles. So I'm sure you've heard some of these before. I before E, except Dr. C. And then in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So that rhymes to help us remember. I remember to this day, 40 years old, I remember that old school show and song, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Do you remember that? If you're a parent, you probably do. Well, I couldn't remember the capital of Chile for the longest time. I just couldn't get it right. So we had to memorize all of the countries and their capitals. I couldn't remember that one. So my mom and I came up with that little jingle, and to this day I still remember it. So I'm like, where in the world is Chile, Santiago, right? So it helps you remember it. And that's what we need to teach our kids, because our kids are not just going to magically know how to memorize stuff. We have to teach them how to do it, and they have to practice it. So here are some kind of fun songs that I found on the web that are really good. You can look them up on YouTube. The Umbrella song by Rihanna is done with order of operations for math. Tricky Dark Matter, if you YouTube that, that's a really good song also for science. And then the states, the United States, learning those and memorizing those states is done to the Thong song. So if you look those up, those are really good ones, but there are tons of them out there, like tons of them. It's kind of amazing. So what now? So these mnemonics weren't magically created. They were just done by normal human beings like you and me. But our kids are not born with those skill set. We have to teach them. So you and your child can create them too. It depends on what type of memorization skill set, like what mnemonic device would help your specific child. They need to exercise their brains, so let's teach them how to do it. And again, I'm all about modeling for our kids, so you want to do this with them. Do these activities with them at first, and then actually have them practice on their own. And again, 5-10 minutes every morning of some type of memorization app, or practicing some of these mnemonic devices that I've taught you today. That will help exercise their brain, and memorization comes easier and easier and easier. Then we've got, this video is an oldie but a goodie. So if you go to YouTube and you type in Mnemonic Wizard's Incredible Feats of Memory, you'll find this little documentary that Keith Morris did on this memorization contest, and you can see how well people do after practice after practice after practice of memorization. It's kind of really cool. So if you're trying to get your kid to buy in to memorization games or activities before they start, you might want to show them this video to kind of help them understand how it really could work. It could totally work for you. It could work for them. So we're going to do that activity again. I just taught you those different types of mnemonic devices. And again, we want to model this for our kids. So use one of the techniques. Either you're categorizing something, making a jingle, an acrostic. If you're creating an acronym, a storyline. If you want to try to memorize things by doing things in color, whatever. This will be a different picture, but we're going to do the same thing. So go ahead and pause right now and time yourself for about a minute and see how many things you can memorize using one of the new techniques instead of the old ones that you've been used to, and then come back and we'll be almost finished up. So welcome back. Make sure that you see how many things that you could write down from this shot here. Was it more this time? Were you able to remember more than 10 or how many ever you did the last time? If not, you might have to pick a different mnemonic device. And likely your kid is going to learn the same way you are. So it's a good indicator of which type of technique you should have them use as well. So I hope that you did better this time. Most people in my workshops and classes do a better job of memorization once they learn the techniques. But I just really have enjoyed my time with you all and trying to help you with this crazy, crazy time of COVID and learning through e-learning and hybrid modalities and blah, 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 blah. I hope that I've been helping all of you, and keep those emails and messages coming. Because I want to know what I can help you with these videos. If you need apps or memorization techniques continued, don't hesitate to ask me for that. You can contact me if you need private tutoring for your child through e-learning, or if you need help setting up a system, I'm here to help you. That's what I do. I love it. I love working with the folks out there who are struggling. Lead a purpose-filled life out there, and don't forget to soak up and skill up. It's super important to never stop learning. Love all of you for hanging out with me today. The next lesson, again, I'll be skipping next week. But the next one that I'll be talking about is different note-taking skills, and that should be an informative one. But just remember that not all note-taking skills are good for everyone. So usually kids will come up with their own type of note-taking skills, and that's fine as long as they keep getting the different types that that they need to learn and retain the information. So again, that practice, practice, practice. Then they also need to make sure that they are practicing it, then they memorize it, then they need to also retain it. So there's different lessons here that your child needs to learn. Again, Dr. M here saying soak up, skill up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and reach out if you need help. Bye.